John's story. The days before the betrayal. I am John, the CEO of a massive corporation worth billions of dollars. By the time I was 30, I had achieved everything I could ever dream of: wealth, power, and a beautiful wife named Vivian. I was a young billionaire who had everything anyone could desire. Vivian, who was 20 when I met her, was everything I had ever wanted. She was stunningly beautiful, youthful, and effortlessly captivating, the kind of woman that turned heads wherever she went. When we first married, I thought we had it all. She was kind, loving, and loyal. She was everything a man could hope for in a wife, and I adored her beyond measure. In the early years of our marriage, I spoiled her, giving her everything she desired. I made sure she had the finest things in life: luxury trips, designer clothes, and gifts that spoke to my devotion to her. But above all, I gave her my love, my attention, and my time. Or at least, I thought I did. However, my life was not just about our marriage. I was a CEO. My company required my attention, and I was often away on business trips, but I always tried to make time for Vivian, to check in with her, to ensure she was happy. I thought that by working hard, I was securing a future for both of us. But little did I know that the distance between us was growing, not because of my lack of love, but because of my absence. Vivian, despite being my wife, began to seem distant. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was changing. I was so absorbed in my work, focusing on securing more deals and expanding the business, that I failed to notice that Vivian was starting to feel something was missing in our relationship. A void was forming, and I couldn't see it. When Vivian turned 25, things took a turn. She met Jake, a man whose physique was impossible to ignore. He was tall, muscular, with a presence that made him the center of attention wherever he went. His confidence was contagious, and he had an undeniable charm. More importantly, Jake had a way with women, a way of making them feel seen and desired, in a way that I, caught up in the demands of my business, hadn't done in months. I was overseas on another long business trip when Vivian met Jake. I thought she would be fine on her own, but I didn't realize the loneliness she was feeling, the absence of my attention, was slowly pushing her towards Jake. His charisma was like a drug, and he quickly won her over. She was captivated by him, by his charm, and his ability to make her feel special. At first, it was just innocent encounters, or at least I believed it to be. When I returned home after 4 months, everything seemed normal. Vivian was still the wife I had married, at least on the surface, but there was something off. She was distant, distracted. I couldn't place it. I tried to give her more of my time, thinking that would fix everything. But by then, things had already changed. Vivian had already been seeing Jake for 2 months by the time I returned. What started as casual encounters soon turned into something more. Vivian had developed deep feelings for him. The emotional and physical satisfaction she was receiving from Jake had awakened something inside her that she hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't understand it. Vivian was becoming someone I didn't recognize. I didn't see the signs. I was too focused on work, too absorbed in the expansion of my empire. Vivian's needs, her emotional well-being, had slipped to the bottom of my priority list. And while I was away, Jake was there to fill the void, to offer what I couldn't: affection, attention, and most importantly, passion. Vivian had found what I wasn't giving her, and in doing so, she found herself falling deeper into Jake's arms. She didn't tell me about Jake. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder than words. She began to withdraw even more from me, and I started feeling like I was just a shadow in her life. I thought it was just the pressure of work, the strain of running a massive corporation, but Vivian was already slipping away, and I didn't see it. She was no longer the woman I had married. She was someone else, someone who had become addicted to the attention Jake was giving her. By the time I returned home for good, Vivian had already fallen hard for Jake. She couldn't hide it anymore. She was in too deep, and I was none the wiser. The more I tried to reconnect with her, the further she pulled away. The warmth in her eyes that once looked at me with love and adoration was now replaced with indifference. She wasn't the same woman I had married, and it was breaking my heart. I was trying to fix everything, trying to be the husband she needed, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and I was blind to it. I couldn't see how far Vivian had fallen into Jake's world. I couldn't see how her feelings for me had faded, how her desire for me had waned. She no longer needed me the way she used to. She had Jake now, but I still didn't know the truth. Vivian continued to hide the affair from me, to keep the secret locked away. The betrayal was already set in motion, and I had no idea. I was living in a false sense of security, thinking that everything was still intact, that my marriage was still strong, when in reality, the foundation was crumbling beneath me. The hidden deception unfolds. I had no idea what was happening behind my back. Life seemed to be moving smoothly, and though I felt a growing distance between Vivian and me, I thought it was just a phase. My work was demanding, and I told myself that things would return to normal once I had more time to dedicate to our marriage. I didn't see the signs. I didn't see how Vivian, the woman I loved and trusted, was slowly being consumed by the charms of Jake. What I didn't know was that Vivian had begun listening to Jake's suggestions, his dangerous, calculated ideas that would not only tear my world apart, but would also destroy everything I had worked for. Vivian was no longer just having an affair with Jake. She was planning something much worse. Under Jake's cunning influence, she was beginning to formulate a plan to take everything from me: my company, my wealth, my properties, and my future. Jake had quickly ingrained himself into Vivian's life, but it wasn't just about their secret meetings anymore. They had a grander scheme in mind, a strategy so devious and subtle that I had no chance of seeing it coming. Jake was more than just a lover. He had become the mastermind behind a plot to bring me to my knees. Their first move was to involve Vivian's family, which, as it turned out, was full of people who shared the same greed and ambition. Vivian's parents, as well as her brother, had all aligned themselves with Jake, willingly playing their parts in the elaborate ruse. They had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and that moment had come. With Vivian's approval, Jake was now involved in the most critical aspects of my life, and I had no idea. Vivian, with her sweet smile and loving demeanor, began to introduce Jake into my company. At first it was subtle. Jake simply joined the team, a new consultant that Vivian had recommended. I thought it was a harmless move, a way to bring in fresh ideas. Little did I know that this was the beginning of Jake's infiltration into my empire. But it didn't stop there. Vivian, always so clever and manipulative, asked me to invest in her family's business. She convinced me that they were in need of funding to grow their operations. I hesitated at first, but her persuasive arguments made me relent. After all, it was family, and I wanted to support her. The investment was significant, but I trusted Vivian completely and didn't question her motives. Soon after, Vivian herself started coming into my company more frequently. She claimed she wanted to stay closer to me, to be involved in my work. But what she was really doing was monitoring my every move, studying my business down to its most sensitive details. She was gathering information, collecting secrets, and passing them all on to Jake, who was now deeply embedded in the company's inner workings. Jake, with his charm and cunning, had gained my trust. He played the part of the ambitious, hard-working employee who was eager to prove himself. He worked tirelessly, staying late at the office, and often accompanied me to meetings, building a rapport with everyone. I thought I was just grooming him for future leadership, but in reality, he was positioning himself for something much more dangerous. Vivian, on the other hand, was playing the perfect wife. She was there every day, subtly encouraging me to trust Jake more, to give him more responsibility. She painted him as a valuable asset to the company. Eventually, I began to trust him with more than just minor tasks. I handed him a major project, something that was crucial to the company's future. Little did I know that this was exactly what Jake had been working towards. With each step, he was getting closer to his goal, to take control of my company from the inside. Meanwhile, Vivian's family was making moves of their own. With the credibility I had built over the years, they were now luring investors into their business under the pretense of legitimate projects. But these projects were nothing more than illusions. They were empty promises, built on nothing but words and deceptive proposals. Their plans were nothing more than a facade, but with my name attached to them, they attracted investors who believed in the legitimacy of the business. Vivian's family, with Jake's guidance, was pulling in large sums of money, and I was unknowingly helping them. I had no idea that they were using my name, my reputation, and my trust in Vivian to manipulate investors into pouring money into a failing business. They were lining their pockets, using the illusion of a successful company to siphon funds away from my empire. All the while, I remained blissfully unaware. I thought I was making sound business decisions. I thought I was helping my wife's family, and I trusted Vivian wholeheartedly. Little did I know that every move I made, every decision I thought was in our best interest, was being watched and guided by Jake and Vivian. Their plan was unfolding step by step, and I was walking straight into their trap. As I spent more time at work, trying to expand the company further, I had no idea that Jake was tightening his grip. He was maneuvering behind the scenes, setting the stage for a takeover. Vivian's family was quietly preparing for their moment of triumph, and I was none the wiser, blissfully focused on the success of my business. In the meantime, Vivian continued to be the perfect wife, pretending to be supportive and loving, all while secretly orchestrating my downfall. She knew exactly what to say to keep me in the dark, to make me believe that everything was fine, even as she worked with Jake to strip everything from me. With every passing day, their plan became more refined, more dangerous. What had started as a simple affair had now turned into a full-fledged conspiracy to take everything I had built. The betrayal was no longer just about love or infidelity. It was about power, money, and control. And I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went. But one thing was certain: Vivian and Jake's plan was far from over. It was only a matter of time before the truth would come crashing down on me. How much longer could I remain oblivious to the disaster that was unfolding around me? The hidden deception deepens. My life seemed to be on the right track. At least that's what I believed. I had everything: a thriving business, a loving wife, and a promising future. Little did I know that beneath the surface, Vivian and Jake were moving deeper into their scheme, and I was blissfully unaware of how much I was being betrayed. Vivian and Jake's collaboration was no longer confined to secret meetings outside of work. Now, with both of them working in my company's headquarters, they had the perfect environment to continue their affair and their plans. Every private meeting they had became another step in their devious strategy, all while I remained oblivious to the fact that my trust in them was being used against me. They used their time together to discuss the next moves in their plotting how to take everything I had worked for, piece by piece. I was fully engrossed in my work. The AI project I had been developing for months, a project I believed to be the breakthrough of a lifetime, consumed most of my time. I poured everything into it: long hours, sleepless nights, and an unwavering belief that this technology would be a game changer. I was convinced that the new AI I was creating would be the pinnacle of modern technology, something that could reshape the industry and secure my legacy. Little did I know that behind my back, Vivian and Jake were preparing to destroy everything I held dear. Vivian, ever the perfect wife, was now increasingly present in my office, offering support and showing a genuine interest in the work I was doing. She told me she wanted to be closer to me and understand more about my projects. I didn't think much of it at first, happy to have her by my side more often. But I didn't realize that her presence in my office wasn't just about being closer to me. It was about gathering information. Vivian had begun to observe everything, picking up on the most sensitive and valuable details of my work. She became my confidant, but in reality, she was using my trust to betray me. She had access to confidential files, and I had no idea she was secretly copying and sending this information to Jake. While I trusted her completely, she was sending my plans straight to the enemy. I had always seen Jake as a reliable consultant in my company, someone I thought I could trust. He worked diligently, and over time, I grew comfortable with him. I started giving him more responsibilities, thinking he could help push the company forward. I was completely blind to the fact that, with every responsibility I handed him, I was giving him more power to infiltrate my business. He had become a trusted member of the team, all while working against me in the shadows. Jake wasn't just a business partner anymore. He was the mastermind behind the plans to take my company from me. Every conversation I had with him, every task I assigned him, was a step closer to my downfall. Vivian, now completely aligned with him, had been giving him the secrets to my success. She had become a spy in my own company, all while pretending to be my supportive wife. Each piece of information I shared with her was then passed on to Jake, who was preparing to destroy everything I had worked for. While I was still focused on making my AI project a success, unaware of what was happening behind the scenes, Jake was already making moves. He was preparing to present a nearly identical AI project to a competitor, one that would be ready before mine. He had stolen the most crucial parts of my work, all thanks to Vivian's secretive actions. What was supposed to be my moment of triumph was slipping away, and I had no idea. Vivian's family, ever the opportunists, were also capitalizing on the situation. They had been using my name to attract investments for their own fraudulent ventures. They promised potential investors that my AI project was on the verge of being launched, creating an illusion of success that was entirely fabricated. They relied on my reputation to lure in money, even though they were offering nothing in return. The more they talked about the upcoming AI launch, the more investors were drawn in, eager to be a part of what they believed was an innovative and lucrative opportunity. They were manipulating people with my name, using my trust to fuel their own greed. I was oblivious to all of this. I thought I was helping my wife's family, supporting them in their endeavors. I thought everything was fine. Vivian was working by my side, and I had no reason to believe anything was wrong. But in reality, I had unknowingly become a pawn in their game. My AI project, the very thing I thought would secure my legacy, was being sold to the highest bidder by the people I trusted the most. While I was consumed by the hope of success, Vivian and Jake were plotting their next move. They were preparing for the moment when they would fully take control of my company and leave me with nothing. My trust in them had allowed them to infiltrate my life and business in ways I couldn't even imagine. Their plot was unfolding slowly, and I had no idea how far it had gone. Vivian was playing the role of the perfect wife, while secretly aligning herself with Jake, and Jake was becoming more and more entrenched in my company, inching closer to taking it over. Meanwhile, my biggest project was slipping through my fingers, and I had no clue. The betrayal reaches its peak. The final preparations for the launch of my new AI product were underway, and I could feel the excitement building inside me. This was it. The moment I had been working for. The breakthrough I had dreamed of for so long. The AI technology I had developed was groundbreaking, and I was ready to present it to the world. The press conference was just around the corner, and I could already picture the headlines. The future of AI, John's revolutionary technology, takes the lead. My heart raced with anticipation, and for once, I allowed myself to believe that success was finally within my reach. But as I stood on the brink of what could have been the greatest achievement of my life, I had no idea that Vivian and Jake were preparing their own plans behind my back, plans that would destroy everything I had worked for. While I was immersed in the final stages of product development, Jake and his allies were finalizing their strategy to take control of my company and crush my career in one fell swoop. Despite all the signs, I remained blissfully ignorant. Vivian had been nothing short of brilliant in keeping her affair hidden and in manipulating me. From the very start, she had expertly played her role as the loving, supportive wife, always by my side, convincing me that everything was fine, that I had nothing to worry about. She had been the perfect accomplice, so skilled in her deception that I had no clue of the trap she was setting for me. Her actions, her words, they were all carefully calculated to keep me blind to the truth. The day of the press conference arrived, and I couldn't have been more eager. As I stood before the cameras, ready to unveil my AI project to the world, the excitement was palpable. I spoke passionately about the future of artificial intelligence and how my technology was going to revolutionize the industry. It was my moment. Everything I had worked for was finally going to be recognized, and I was going to be the one to lead the way. But just as I was about to reveal the culmination of years of hard work, the unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a group of individuals from a rival company, accompanied by Jake, barged into the press conference. The room fell silent as they took the stage, their presence completely disrupting the event. The leader of the group stepped forward, and, to my shock, accused me of intellectual property theft. He claimed that my AI project was not original, that it had been copied from their own development, and that I had violated their intellectual property rights. They presented what appeared to be indisputable evidence: documents, code, and even emails that seemed to corroborate their story. The evidence they provided was flawless, meticulously detailed, leaving no room for doubt. I was stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. How could this be? I had poured my heart and soul into this project. I knew every line of code, every design detail. Yet here they were, accusing me of theft, and the proof was right in front of me. I tried to explain, to defend myself, but the more I spoke, the more the situation seemed to spiral out of control. I couldn't refute the evidence they had presented. My mind raced, but nothing I said could clear my name. The truth was, I couldn't prove that my product was entirely original, because in a way, it wasn't anymore. Vivian had been feeding Jake everything she could, secretly taking files and information from my project and handing them over to him. She had given him everything he needed to create a nearly identical version of my AI technology, and now it was all coming back to haunt me. The backlash was immediate and severe. The press had a field day with the scandal, and the accusations were plastered all over the news. My company's stock prices plummeted as investors began to panic. They began pulling their investments, questioning whether my company had been dishonest. Partners dropped out of deals. 10 and several companies filed lawsuits against me, claiming they had been defrauded. The damage was swift and overwhelming. I tried to keep my composure, but inside I was collapsing. The walls were closing in, and I couldn't stop the inevitable from happening. Vivian's family, who had been playing their own game from the sidelines, seized the opportunity. They quietly withdrew all their investments from my company and disappeared, leaving me to take the fall. They abandoned me without hesitation, leaving me to face the consequences alone. The company that had once been my pride and joy was now crumbling, and I was powerless to stop it. The betrayal from Vivian, from the people I trusted, had reached its peak. With the company on the verge of collapse, I had no choice but to begin selling off assets just to stay afloat. My once pristine reputation was in tatters, and the wealth I had accumulated over the years was quickly disappearing. I had no way of fixing the damage that had been done. Vivian and Jake had successfully destroyed everything, and I was left with nothing but the ruins of my empire. As I watched everything I had built crumble before my eyes, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the betrayal. Vivian, the woman I had trusted, had played me like a fool. She had used my love for her, my trust in her, to destroy my life. Jake, the man I had welcomed into my company, had been the mastermind behind it all. They had taken everything from me, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. But one thing was clear: this wasn't over yet. They may have succeeded in ruining my company, but I wasn't going to let them destroy me completely. The fight wasn't over. I still had something left in me, and I would find a way to expose their treachery. The truth would come out, and when it did, they would pay for everything they had taken from me, the ultimate betrayal and final reckoning. My life, once so seemingly perfect, had collapsed in a matter of days. I had everything: a thriving company, a successful career, and a loving wife. My AI project, which I had poured my heart and soul into, was going to be my legacy. I believed in it with every fiber of my being. It was going to be the game changer I had always dreamed of, the breakthrough that would secure my place in history. But now, in the blink of an eye, everything was slipping away. As I prepared for the press conference to unveil my groundbreaking AI project, I had no idea that my world was about to come crashing down. The company I had built, the dreams I had worked so hard to achieve, were all being destroyed. Vivian, the woman I trusted more than anyone else, had been the architect of my downfall. I had no idea how deeply she had betrayed me. Until it was too late. It all started the day before the press conference. I was busy with last-minute preparations, checking the details for the big reveal. Vivian, ever the caring wife, came to me, seemingly concerned. She handed me a document, telling me it was just a routine formality that needed my signature. In my rush and excitement, I signed it without a second thought. After all, it was just paperwork, right? Little did I know, the document I had signed was a divorce agreement, an agreement that transferred 60% of my wealth to Vivian. My properties, cars, and even my company shares were all hers, and I, in my ignorance, had signed it away. I had no time to dwell on it at that moment. The press conference was approaching, and I had to focus on the unveiling of my AI technology. But in the days that followed, the truth began to unravel. Vivian's lawyers arrived, demanding that I proceed with the transfer of assets according to the divorce agreement. Only then did the weight of what I had signed sink in. I had unwittingly handed over my fortune, my legacy, my life's work. As I struggled to make sense of it all, the true scope of Vivian's betrayal became clear. Not only had she stolen my intellectual property, she had handed it over to Jake, her lover, and my so-called trusted associate. The AI technology I had been working on for years, the thing I believed would define my career, was now being used by my rivals, thanks to Vivian and Jake's plot. They had stolen it, and now it was too late for me to reclaim it. What hurt even more than losing my company, my wealth, and my project was the fact that Vivian had been playing me for a fool the entire time. She had been with Jake from the start, feeding him information, helping him build a replica of my AI, all while pretending to be the loving wife. I had trusted her completely, believing she was my partner in every sense. But all along, she had been working against me, tearing down everything I had built. Vivian's family, too, had been playing their part in the scheme. They had used my name, my reputation, to lure investors into their fraudulent ventures. They promised them the world, using my upcoming AI product as bait. But there was no real product behind the promises. It was all just smoke and mirrors. And I had unknowingly given them the resources to carry out their plan. In the wake of the accusations of intellectual property theft, my company began to fall apart. Investors pulled out, partners dropped us, and the press had a field day with the scandal. The stock price plummeted, and I was left with nothing. My world was in ruins, and I had no idea how to recover. The legal battles over the intellectual property rights were only the beginning. As Vivian and Jake continued to distance themselves from me, they had successfully taken everything I had ever worked for. The moment of realization hit me hard. I was not just a man who had been betrayed in love, but I was also a man who had been robbed of everything he had built. My life's work, the company I had built from the ground up, the product I had believed would secure my future, it was all gone. And in its place was the cold, bitter truth of betrayal. Vivian, the woman I had once trusted with everything, had become my worst enemy. She had not only stolen my heart, but had also stolen my company, my future, and my identity. And Jake, he was not just an accomplice, he was the mastermind behind it all. I had been so blinded by love and trust that I failed to see the danger until it was too late. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of it all. I struggled to cope with the overwhelming sense of loss, the crushing realization that the woman I had loved had been plotting my downfall for years. I had trusted her completely, given her access to my most prized possession, my work, my dreams, and she had used that trust to destroy me. But as the dust settled, I realized that I had to fight back. The damage was done, but I couldn't let them get away with it. I couldn't let Vivian and Jake think they had won. They had taken everything from me, but they couldn't take away my will to fight. I began to gather evidence, to look for a way to expose their treachery. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to let them win. I wrote this story as a way to share my experience with the world, to warn others about the dangers of blind trust. I wanted people to understand that even the most brilliant and successful individuals can be taken down by those they trust the most. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I will keep fighting for justice. I will keep fighting for the truth. As I shared my story, I hoped for justice, for the truth to come to light. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. The fight for my life, my company, and my reputation was far from over. Vivian and Jake may have thought they had won, but I wasn't finished yet. There was more to this story than they realized.